If you're a woman, odds are high that you have been told by your doctor that your symptoms are all in your head. As a doctor of Chinese medicine, I'm here to tell you that that's absolute nonsense. So, just because Western medicine can't quantify the dynamic rhythms of your hormones doesn't mean that nothing real is going on in your body. So, that's why I started Rooted in Rhythm. It's going to be a 5-week live course on women's health and Chinese medicine. Weekly 1-hour lectures, live Q&As, and real answers. So the goal is to help you learn to listen to your body, listen to what your cycle is trying to tell you so that you can radically transform your health and support your hormones naturally. Check out the link, it's in the show notes. I can't wait to see you there.
All right, everybody, I'm super excited. We have Caroline Allen here again, and we are going to be talking about fulvic and humic minerals, which are truly one of the most essential health supplements that I recommend to my patients, my friends, my family all day, every day. And Caroline's been here before, but I want to bring her back because she has a new book coming out, and there is so much more we need to discuss. So if you haven't listened to the first one, please do, and then come back and listen to this. But Caroline, thank you so much for joining me again. It is always such a pleasure to see you.
It's always such a pleasure to see you too, Chloe. Thank you for having me.
This is going to be so much fun. So when I talk to people about minerals, what I often think about and what I often lay out the main three things that I think of minerals for are detoxification, gut lining integrity and gut health, and mitochondrial function. So those are my sort of go-tos when I think about fulvic and humic minerals. Are those sort of the main three that you think about when you start looking at minerals and how they impact health?
It's not that I don't think of those because those are fantastic. The way that I like to frame minerals for people is this: if you're in a room or you're driving or you're taking a walk and you look around your world, all of the structure in the entire universe at its foundational level is made of minerals. In fact, all of the structure in your own body at a foundational level is made of minerals. So, minerals truly are the foundation of everything in the universe. So, that's the first place that I look. The second place is that minerals are the fuel for your body. So, they're the foundational fuel along with amino acids. Your body makes amino acids, it makes no minerals. So, the way I like to describe it is a campfire. So inside your cells, you've got these things called mitochondria. And the mitochondria are like the match. They are in a campfire. If you're going to build a campfire, they're like the match, the thing that allows you to ignite the fuel and make energy, make fire. The fuel, though, is the wood, like the heavy fuel that you need, is the minerals. And then the stuff that's going to light on fire easily, that tinder, is like the amino acids. They're readily available in your body. There's, of course, many that you have to bring in from the outside, but the minerals are that foundational fuel for most energy production in the body. They are also involved in over 5,000 biosynthesis processes in your body. There is actually not a single biosynthesis process in your body that does not require minerals. So that's how foundational they are. The fuel, the foundational structure, and the parts of biosynthesis in your body.
Yeah, it's incredible. And they're so deficient in our society today. I think a lot of people have heard the term mitochondrial health and mitochondrial deficiency a lot recently. It seems to be quite a buzzword in health and wellness, but a lot of people likely don't understand really what our mitochondria are or why they're sort of being impaired in our society today. So I nerd out a lot on all of this, but I would love to hear your take on what mitochondria do and why we are having troubles with our mitochondria in today's society.
Yeah. Well, let's also give people a sense of scale of
Yeah.
mitochondria because it's kind of abstract, these mitochondria. Okay, what are they? Where are they? How do they work? So let's first start with scale. So your body is made completely of single cells. And every cell in your body knows, a heart cell knows it's a heart cell, a cell in your eye knows it's an eye cell, a muscle cell knows it's a muscle. Like all these cells have intended functions and they know what they're doing. Now, you have about 37 trillion to 150 trillion cells in your body, depending on the size of your body. So already that's a phenomenal number. Like it's hard to imagine 37 trillion,
Yeah.
150 trillion. Like it's really hard to imagine. So let's start there. Now let's think about one single cell on the back of my hand here. One single cell has maybe 200 mitochondria inside one single cell on the back of my hand here. In my heart, in one single cell, there's maybe 5,000 to 8,000 mitochondria.
Wow.
And in my brain, in a single neuron, there could be upwards of 2 million mitochondria in a single neuron.
That is wild.
So these mitochondria they're energy generating, they have energy generating capacity in your body, and they generate these tiny units of energy called ATP. And so, but think about how much energy is being generated in your body. If you're fully fueled, you have all the fuel you need, and your mitochondria are functioning very well, you can generate about 1,200 watts of electricity in your body a day. 1,200 watts, that's like enough to run your toaster and your blender. So, a fair amount of electricity. Now, if you don't have the fuel, like that mineral fuel or the amino acids, like you might have plenty of mitochondria that are active and working, but they actually can't generate that ATP that you need, those little tiny bits of energy. So instead of generating 1,200 watts of electricity, your body may only be able to generate maybe 600-800 watts. So now think about those 2 million mitochondria in your brain that are trying to generate energy. They don't have the fuel. So what happens is you end up with brain fog because literally your cognition is operating at a lower electrical capacity than it could. So this is kind of the context for helping people understand, like, why would I even care about mitochondria? Mitochondria generate most of the energy in your body. So you have to have the fuel. That's why you should care about minerals, because minerals are the fuel for every single one of those miniature campfires in your cells.
The mini campfires. My understanding is that we have so many different toxins that are impacting our mitochondrial health and causing havoc in our brains and slowing everything down, whether it's the microplastics or the glyphosate. And not only do these minerals support the campfires, support us getting the energy, but they also seem to help detoxify some of these toxins, which is truly remarkable.
Yes. So, yes. And so when you think about mitochondrial health in general in the body, so you've got, quadrillions, probably more mitochondria in your body, and a certain portion of them are active. And as you get older, naturally your mitochondrial function lowers. So there are fewer mitochondria available that are really active. But now let's talk about the health of that one mitochondria out of the 2 million that are in a single neuron in your brain. And, there's all sorts of toxic substances or environmental toxins that affect the actual lining of the mitochondria. And so the mitochondria actually was a separate organism, and single cells actually incorporated that organism into the cell. So it's actually a foreign thing living in your body. Quadrillions of them.
I was about to say a whole lot of them.
The cells were like, great, here's a great little ATP energy, fuel, like a little power plant. Let's just bring it into our cell. But the thing you have to also understand is that in nature, all cells at a very fundamental mitochondrial level work the same way. They all need minerals and they all need amino acids to go through their process. And it's a multi-stage process in which an amino acid and a mineral comes together at each stage. That's why you might have heard them called cofactors. And they go through this process. I'm sure you've explained this many times on your podcast, but they go through this process, and the output is this ATP energy. So, but the thing is, those minerals actually have to get into the mitochondria. They have to be available to the mitochondria. So that means you have to take minerals from outside your body, from your food, or maybe from a supplement. You put it in your mouth, and it goes down into your stomach, where it gets broken down with hydrochloric acid. It ends up in your gut. It gets broken down further with enzymes and all sorts of microbiome processes. And then it gets broken down all the way down to its ionic chemical components, where hopefully it gets absorbed through the lining of your gut into your bloodstream, still not where the mitochondria is. Now that's only two of the stages. You've digested it, you've absorbed it through the lining of your gut. Now it's in your bloodstream. Now it has to get into your cells. So now your cell has this lining that is very active, and it can tell what hits up against it. Let's say a molecule of magnesium hits up against the wall of the cell, and the cell goes, "Oh, that's magnesium, let it in." It's like having a peephole in your door, and you can see who's out there if you want to let them in or not. It lets the magnesium in. And then the magnesium might hit up against a mitochondria, and the mitochondria goes, "Oh, great, that's magnesium." And then it utilizes it as a cofactor in its process of generating energy. So this process is very complex. And there are impediments, potential impediments at every single stage. So what did nature do? Because every cell needs minerals and amino acids. What did nature do? It created pre-formulated molecules with all the minerals that the mitochondria needs in the proper ratios. And it created that molecule as a delivery system for minerals into cells and mitochondria.
Please explain this process, because I think it's just the coolest thing in the world. And I also just think it's interesting because with your products and with mine, I think we hear so much also about nature deficiency in society today. And I think that is a genuine problem, because so many people are not able to engage in nature the way that we are traditionally meant to. But I do feel like taking minerals, taking high quality herbs, particularly those that are specifically formulated so that they can be absorbed and utilized by the body, is such a beautiful way of bringing nature into our bodies and helping us heal. But the way that I think it's the fulvic mineral, it might be the humic, absorbs into the cell and jumps its supports for the cell is just brilliant. So I'd love to hear you explain that.
Yeah. And I also love what you do because of its natural qualities. It's really the wisdom of nature. And I think about all the people, all the scientists who have studied mineral depletion or electrolyte depletion, and they've tried to figure out how to get these minerals back into the body. But the problem is they didn't actually go out into nature and look how nature does it. The beauty of herbology is understanding the efficacy and the effects of each of the substances in these plants, and then putting them together to have a really positive effect in the body for somebody who's struggling. And that's the beautiful thing about humic and fulvic. And they truly represent a natural technology for supporting cellular ecosystems. And when you think about the body the way I described it, your body is a cellular ecosystem. It works a lot like a forest, much more like a forest than a car. And I think about people.
Exact analogy all of the time.
Oh, you do? Perfect. That's great. It's exactly right. So you would never go buy a car if you didn't know how to put gas in the tank, right? But most of us are walking around with bodies that we have no idea how to properly fuel. And so we eat tons of food, we put like all sorts of stuff in our body, and then we still feel hangry at a cellular level. because we're not actually getting the minerals and amino acids, the fuel that we need all the way into the mitochondria, where the mitochondria can utilize it for lighting our little campfires. So, but of course, nature, in its amazing wisdom, created something. And that's what I realize Humic and Fulvic do. We're really disconnected from nature a lot today. We live in cities, we buy our food at the grocery store. Many people don't even go out into the woods or the desert or wherever into nature, so that we feel disconnected. And the beautiful thing about humic and fulvic is when you put humic and fulvic in your body, you're actually reconnecting yourself to what I call the sustainable loop that nature relies on. So in nature, plants grow, and the way they grow is by taking minerals from the soil and amino acids from the soil. They absorb them through their roots, and they use the minerals for structure, and they use the minerals and amino acids for generating energy, and they build whatever size plant they are, a pea shoot or a huge California redwood tree, right? It's all minerals and amino acids that are creating that. Of course, there's carbohydrates, all sorts of other macros as well. But those are all built from these building blocks, these fundamental building blocks. So when that plant grows, at a certain point, it dies. And when it dies, it falls and it decomposes. And as it decomposes, it delivers its mineral content and its amino acid content back into the soil, where now that same content is available for the next plants to grow in the spring. But what do? We cultivate. So we grow plants in soil and we harvest them and we take them away and we eat them and we dispose of their waste far from where they're grown. And what that's done over hundreds of years that we've been cultivating in the same soil is it's depleted the soil. And in fact, in 1930s, they had a special session of Congress talking about mineral depletion in the soil.
Oh, wow.
And we've done nothing. There's regenerative farming is really the only thing, and no-till farming, things like that have started to actually address this issue. And it's in a very small way compared to our production farming methods. So what we have to do is reconnect ourselves. And when those plants die and decompose, what they're actually creating is humic and fulvic. When freshwater plants decompose, the microbes in the soil go through a process and they create these molecules, humic and fulvic, which are little storage units for energy for future cellular life. So what we're doing is we're taking these units of these little stored energy packets and we're putting them directly into our body. And our body is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I know just what this is, because our cells evolved right on the earth the way all the other cells did. So our bodies actually recognize humic and fulvic, pre-formulated, already in the natural ratios that minerals need to come into our body, ready and easily broken down, absorbed, and assimilated into the cells.
It is just astounding how much more brilliant nature is than we will ever be. And that's something that I'm humbled by all of the time. And that research shows time and time again. I remember when CBD started hitting the market and everybody started doing research on it, and it was showing the entourage effect. Everybody
Yes.
was freaking out about the entourage effect. If you use all these different chemical components together, the whole plant, it's going to be so much safer and more effective than if you just do the chemical isolate. And then the chemical isolate got patented by a pharmaceutical company, and now we can't say CBD on any of our products, and the whole CBD industry is about to be shut down anyway, so it is what it is. But what it gets back to is that in Chinese medicine, we use whole plants because the whole plants have different elements and different chemicals in it that support each other and make it safer and more effective so that and more bioavailable for our bodies.
Mhm.
Now, tell me a little bit about like these. I see these freaking electrolyte drinks everywhere. And I get such a kick out of it. I just went on vacation with my parents and my son, and like they don't drink water at all. And I was like, right, this is a generational thing. I mean, they do a little bit, but like me and Remy are I'm getting gallons of glass bottled water for me and Remy, and my parents are like, well, just get this plastic jug and it'll last for the next 2 days. And I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna die. But I feel like so many people don't really understand hydration and their hydration needs. And then also, I think, as I was mentioning to you before, I do feel like there's just so much noise in the health and wellness industry where people are just getting to the front of the line, getting to the front of the supermarket aisle because their products have a lot of funding and are easy and sort of catchy, you know? And I feel like that's sort of the case with a lot of these electrolyte powders because when you dive into the science, it doesn't seem like they're nearly as effective as the products that you guys have at Beam. So I'd love to hear the comparison and sort of how your products work in the body versus some of those salt-based electrolyte products that are
Yeah.
so prevalent right now. That I mean,
Yeah.
they're everywhere.
The biggest challenge with salt-based electrolytes is it's a misunderstanding. People were against salt for years, and now people jumped on this salt bandwagon. But here's the problem. If you think about your body, and your body is like the earth, your digestive tract is like the rivers and streams. And what are rivers and streams? They're freshwater systems. Your bloodstream is like the ocean. It's salt water. And in fact, they're very close to the same salinity, your bloodstream and the ocean. So people they use this a lot in the salt water, I mean in the salt-based electrolyte thing, saying, we're salt-based beings and all that. I'm like, yes, that's true in the bloodstream. But your gut, your microbiome, all of the microflora and microorganisms in your gut, those are freshwater beings. Those are not saltwater beings. Throw salt in a pond, a huge amount of salt in a pond, and see what happens to all of the microorganisms and plant life, etc. It's not going to thrive.
Yeah.
So now you're taking a system. So, and this is back to the whole idea of thinking of your body as an ecosystem. If you took a wheelbarrow of salt and threw it in a forest, what would happen to those freshwater plants in that forest? They would not thrive. They would struggle until water came and removed all that excess salt. So in nature, and this is the thing, the misunderstanding about minerals is there's a lot of talk about how much. So people ask you, how much magnesium is in your product? How much potassium? How much sodium? How much? And it's just a misunderstanding because minerals actually work in balance with one another. And if you think out in nature, where do we have concentrations of minerals? And then think about those places. Is plant life, cellular life thriving where you have concentrations of single minerals? No. Ecosystems, cellular ecosystems thrive where you have balanced amounts of all the minerals that those cellular organisms need to thrive. So one single mineral could have relationships with up to 10 other minerals, and they need to work in balance. So when you take a huge amount of salt and you put it into your gut on a regular basis, what happens is you throw off the potassium sodium balance, and that's what moves water around your body. Now you put this massive amount of salts and the magnesium salts, potassium salts, and the sodium, and then they cover it up with sugars or stevia or other of these types of sweeteners.
And a lot of natural flavors.
Yeah, and a lot of natural flavors, exactly. So you
They're
can
not
get
natural.
your, whatever. And these things are not making your gut microbiome happy. And so many athletes that we work with, they come to us and they've got trashed microbiome. They're constantly having diarrhea, or they're having cramping or bloating. Their guts are trashed. We get them off of the salt-based electrolytes and we get them onto just using the natural humic and fulvic substances. They're cramping ends. They stop feeling dehydrated all the time and they start feeling replenished. Because when you put a huge amount of salts in your body, in your gut says, "Oh, wow, this is a concentration. We need to pull water from the rest of your body and urinate this out. We need to get rid of this." So you start having frequent urination. And when you do this over a long period of time, it actually irritates the lining of your bladder and kidney. So now you've got irritation, which you end up having a lot of urination all the time. And what is that doing? It's dehydrating you. So hydration means getting water into your body and ultimately getting that water into your cells. Hydration happens at a cellular level. So just putting a lot of water, drinking a whole gallon of water and taking some salt-based electrolytes does not equal hydration. So it's really just a misunderstanding. And the other problem that we have with hydration is drinking water that has no minerals in it. So filtered or distilled water, that water has no way of actually getting absorbed into your body. It just goes straight through. It literally will just go straight through.
Yeah, it's funny because it's I saw some social media where somebody was like, they've made a whole industry saying that water is not wet enough and you can't absorb it. But it is really true. And I think a lot of it breaks down to that mineral deficiency. And it's ironic that all of these electrolyte packets and all of the people who are promoting them as a way to get hydrated better.
Right.
And it seems to be that they are missing the mark.
It does work on a short-term basis. So this is like people say, is there ever a time to use a salt-based electrolyte? I said, if you're going to crash, if you have heat stroke and you're about to like pass out, that's a great solution for a short-term quick hit. But they were never designed to be used. They were emergency. This was an emergency tool. They were never designed to be used on a daily basis. And people now use them on sometimes taking 2 or 3 stick packs a day.
Yeah, that's wild. I think of them as like Gatorade, you know, when I was a kid and I would play
Mhm.
soccer and then you'd have a big jug of the Gatorade. Now, obviously, I would never put that in my body, but I'm like, okay, so if you're super depleted, as you said, it makes sense to add some salts under those circumstances. But generally, in terms of a day-to-day supplement, to me, it makes much more sense. And I feel the difference in my body and more importantly, my brain when
Yeah.
I'm taking your product. So, as I mentioned to you before, Remy and I were in a house that we rented in Boulder that had mold, radon, and carbon monoxide. And I'm sorry to anybody listening who has heard me say this 5 million times, but it was really freaking traumatic because, like, Remy was, he's already neurologically very impaired and he's fully nonverbal. So he was just screaming and crying for hours a day. My brain fog was off the charts. I'm still sort of getting back to my baseline after quite a lot of time and a lot of biohacking. I feel like your minerals were one of the things that really moved the needle for me. And I
Yeah.
combine those often with Ian's Wizard Science Neuro RX product because those are two of the ones that I really stand by in terms
Yeah.
of products that I recommend specifically for neurological conditions.
Yeah.
How do these minerals really support cognitive health? I know we already talked about the mitochondria in terms of giving the brain energy, but how is that really, what are some of the other ways and how does that really seem to impact people?
Yeah. The main thing that I want people to understand is Humic and Fulvic are ecosystem foundation tools. So they were designed by nature to support ecosystems at the most foundational level. So the one other piece that I didn't, we talked about what are minerals, they're foundation, they're the structure, they're the energy, the fuel. And the other thing that they are is they carry the electrical current in your body. So, and they work that way for all ecosystems. If you're very deficient in minerals, one of the reasons your cognition doesn't work very well is because literally you don't have enough firing, enough ability to do the firing because there aren't enough minerals in your body. So they carry the electrical current through your body. And we recognize nerves do that, but the whole neurotransmitter effect is all driven by minerals.
Yeah. It's funny because I think some people balk at the idea that the body is electric, which there's a phenomenal book, The Body is
Mm.
Electric. We literally measure neurological output by an EEG and our heart output by an EKG. So just adding that in there as an aside, because I do think that it's an essential aspect of health that is often overlooked in the Western medical paradigm and sort of
Yeah.
our general understanding of how the body works.
So the other interesting thing about Humic and Fulvic, and this is again why I call them ecosystem tools, because ecosystems have a couple of different requirements. One, they need energy. So they need to get energy, that fuel, into the mitochondria where it can be generated into energy. But they also need to be able to remove toxic substances. So in nature, everywhere, there are opportunities for concentrations of chemicals, either natural chemicals or man made chemicals. And for cellular systems to thrive, there had to be a way for cellular systems to remove these substances that are toxic to cellular function. And that's what really Fulvic and Humic represent that together as a system because while Fulvic, so let's talk about Fulvic and Humic and what they are and so people can envision them in their mind. Does that sound like a good idea?
Love it. Yes.
Okay. So if you put your hand in a fist and that fist is a cell in your body, imagine that's the size of a cell. And then you think of the head of a pin. The head of a pin is the size of a fulvic molecule, very, very tiny. It's extremely small molecular weight. So this molecule carries with it a full spectrum of minerals that your body needs in the natural ratios that your body needs to receive them in. And that's the same ratio of minerals that redwood tree needs at a mitochondrial level. It's actually as above, so below. Same. So this pre-formulated molecule with all the minerals you need, but it has this crazy capacity. It also can, because it's a very, very strong electrolyte molecule, it also can attach other nutritional elements to it. Now, when the fulvic molecule hits up against the cell wall, your body recognizes it and goes, oh, that's fulvic. Open the door. And the fulvic gets a free pass through the cell lining into your cell. Now, then it does something that no other molecule on Earth can do, which is that it changes its polarity. And when it does that, it's like if you can imagine a magnet, if you had a magnet with a whole bunch of metal shavings attached to it and you could turn the magnet off, those shavings would fall off. That's exactly what happens with the fulvic molecule. It goes into your cell, all these things are attached to it, lots of minerals and nutritional elements, and then it changes its polarity and those things drop off inside the cell where now the mitochondria in your cell have those things available for generating energy as cofactors. Now this fulvic molecule is in a different polarity and now it travels around in your cell and it picks up biowaste, toxins, heavy metals, nanoplastics, viral detritus, graphene oxide, glyphosate that's been gotten in there because your body thought it was a glycine. So it grabs these things and now it hits up against the cell wall and the cell opens and it carries that out into your bloodstream. And then it changes its polarity again and it drops those things in your bloodstream. Now, for people who really want to geek out deeper, I could talk to you about the actual chemistry and how it happens. It happens because of pH, and there's a whole bunch of very complex chemical processes that make this possible. And frankly, when you start studying it, you end up studying quantum mechanics because they don't even really know how it's possible for this molecule to change its polarity. It's the only molecule on Earth they've ever found that has this capacity. So now it's dropped all these things in the bloodstream. So now its partner, called a humic molecule, comes into play. Now if you hold your hand in a fist, that's a humic molecule, and the head of the pin is the size of your cell. So the humic molecule is much larger than a cell, hangs out in your bloodstream, and it just travels through your bloodstream. It's called a polyelectrolyte molecule, which means it has different areas on its surface that are positively charged and negatively charged. I mean, who knew that? Like that was even possible, right? Think of a sponge. You know how the surface of a sponge has got all these, you know, spaces and incoherencies, like weird places. Well, that's what the surface of the humic molecule is like, but it's got all these different negatively and positively charged areas. So it travels through and it just picks up heavy metals, biowaste, toxins, nanoplastics, glyphosate, all sorts of things, senescent cells, so zombie cells that have died and are causing oxidative stress, other things. And those things all attach to the molecule. At a certain point, this molecule gets so heavy that it falls out of solution, the same way like if you mixed a powder into a glass of water and then you left the glass for a while and the powder would precipitate to the bottom. That's what happens. It just gets so heavy, it falls out of solution, precipitates out, and it leaves your body through all of the possible elimination pathways. So humic works this way in soil, in water systems, in your body. Works the same way. It gathers and carries these things out of these systems.
It's just so incredible because I think of obviously my heart is focused on supporting children with special needs and the epidemic of chronic health disorders in our kiddos. I also obviously have a penchant for very depleted women and moms who are doing far too much with very little support. And the way that these minerals support our bodies in such a multifaceted way while being so gentle is astounding to me because I remember when I started working with Remy and I'm looking at all these different detox pathways and different things you can do and chelation therapy versus there are just dozens of different ways to detox heavy metals. And then I'm terrified of glyphosate. I've been cooking this kid organic foods for his entire life and before he was born. And still, when I ran a heavy metal test, he was high in multiple things and I'm trying to figure out what to do. It just seems like the simplest way to support our children and ourselves, but really it's just so brilliant for our kids, especially our kids as they're growing. I mean, it just seems like all of our children must be super deficient in these minerals. And this is such an easy way to get them into their bodies, help them have a daily detoxification of so many of these different pathogens and different toxins that we absolutely cannot avoid. I mean, I did a deep dive on microplastics last year, and it is so terrifying. And over 50% of the microplastics we're ingesting is in the air. So it's from the cars driving by, it's from drying something synthetic in your dryer. It's really terrifying. And as we know, glyphosate is impossible to avoid, even if you're eating all organic, because it's in the fucking rain.
Yeah.
So it just seems like these minerals are something that every single child and I literally recommend them to everybody that I know because I think that they're essential. But really, for the development of our kiddos, I think it's so important. And for all of the kids with special needs, I can't think of anything more foundational for them to be
Yeah.
taking today.
I really think many people have correlated the rise in chronic health issues with glyphosate. And certainly there's a correlation there. But I also think the rise, particularly in chronic issues in kids, is from mineral depletion. And the sad fact is, you cannot, I mean, here you're feeding Remedy the absolute best food. And yet the problem is that the foods we are eating today, you would have to eat so much quantity of food to get all the mineral content, that fuel that you needed from the food. You wouldn't be able to do it. So you really have to provide extra mineral replenishment to your cells. And I particularly use replenishment as opposed to supplementation. Supplementation just means adding, and replenishment means actually replenishing using the replenishment system of the body. So, and that's why I go back to nature and I say, well, how does I have this great picture of my forest on my external display and I constantly look at it. I'm like, how does that tree, this huge tree that's grown for hundreds of years, how does it replenish? How does it get all the minerals it needs to build this huge structure? It gets it from the soil. So there are these natural tools for replenishment of all the minerals your body needs. It makes more sense to go back to nature rather than going to the health food store and getting a bottle of magnesium and potassium and sodium and calcium and chromium and selenium and copper and vanadium and molybdenum and all many that you've never probably even heard of that you absolutely need in micronutrient levels.
Well, then they're not even at the necessarily appropriate ratios if you're just getting the macro supplements of one thing at a time. So, yeah, it seems so logical to take this. And I should add that the Beam products taste like water.
That is a nice thing. Yeah.
Which makes it so simple. Though at the beginning of the school year, Remy started middle school this year, so he had new teachers. And I was like, by the way, Remy's water is often black because of the minerals I put in them.
Yeah, don't worry, don't worry. That's a good idea, actually. Yeah, I'll let them know.
I was like, I should maybe give them a heads up that I'm not just giving him swamp water. How do you guys get the minerals? Like where? How it might be a trade secret, but I'm just curious how you actually are able to get them.
Yeah, so the minerals themselves come from a material called humate. And humate comes from about 10 to 12 feet below the earth. And what it is actually ancient, like 65 million year old decomposed rainforests. So 65 million years ago, the earth was covered with rainforests all around a very much larger swath of the world, like all the way up through Utah were rainforests, if you can imagine that. And a meteor hit the Yucatan and it killed 75% of all life on Earth in a few hours. It was the end of the dinosaur age. And all these rainforests around the earth died and decomposed and delivered their mineral content in the form of humic and fulvic into the soil at very deep now, millions of years later. It's like 10 to 12 feet below the soil. And there's other around the earth, there are other humic, it's called humic substances. There's shilajit in the Himalayas. There's peat that's in the British Isles. There's terra preta in South America. And here in North America, we have a few substances.
I cannot for the life of me take shilajit.
Uh-huh.
It's so gnarly.
Yeah, some people don't mind the flavor. I'm a very sensitive flavor person, and I just don't want to get up every morning and take something that's going to taste so bad. A lot of people are really, they don't care. They take so many things that taste bad, but I don't want to do it.
No, I'll do raw herbs when appropriate, but most of the
Yeah,
time
Chinese
I
herbs.
but shilajit, there's something about it. I just, I can't get myself to do it. I certainly wouldn't be able to get Remy to do it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so on the flip end of my personal focus in terms of who I'd like to support are women largely around my age in their 40s who are often run down, often sandwiched between taking care of kids, now starting to explore the need to take care of their parents as well while working full time, and entering or in perimenopause. So, how can these minerals support women in that sort of life juncture that is often just unbelievably challenging for so many?
Yeah, and Chloe, that was me. And that's how I got into this. Is I was in a corporate career. I had two young kids, mostly parenting them alone. And one of the things that women don't understand or don't really recognize is that when you grow a baby in your belly, in your uterus, what happens is all of their structure comes from your body. Everything that made that fetus comes from your body. And most women start out mineral depleted before they're pregnant. And then they're growing a baby and they become extremely depleted. And then afterwards, they have all sorts of maybe trouble with milk production. And they're usually taking like a multivitamin, but they're not doing really good mineral replenishment, both before, during, and after pregnancy. So if you can start replenishing your minerals even before you're pregnant and through your pregnancy and after, it's going to radically change your experience. And then we have the issue of perimenopause, which is this sea change event and this real change of the way that your body works. And again, I say that the reason so many women are having so much struggle with perimenopause, I mean, did we hear about that with our mothers? My mother, not really, not saying they didn't have it, but I think they had it at a much lower level because they had food that had more minerals. They were drinking water that had minerals. So their level of mineral depletion was less. But now it hits hard with women, and it hit hard with me. I had flatlined adrenals for over a year. I was really struggling to get them to come back. I had real bad inflammation in my gut, continual bloating and elimination issues. I had bad inflammation in my gums. I had periodontal disease and bone loss in my teeth. Been to many dentists trying to heal what was happening in my mouth. I had ongoing sinus infections, so just a struggling immune system. And I had major brain fog. And the worst part was I didn't sleep at night. So I woke up 4, sometimes 5 times a night regularly. So the only thing that I changed was taking Humic and Fulvic into my body every day. And over the space of about 8 or 9 months, all of those symptoms radically changed or completely went away. So, that's what started me on this journey of like, what? Like minerals? Because I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars going to specialists, doctors, naturopaths, natural practitioners of every ilk, taken so many Chinese herbs and things, and they didn't really change the underlying issue, which was that I was so mineral depleted. So, and when you think about hormonal health, in particular for women who are entering perimenopause, please remember that every hormonal process in your body relies on minerals. Every single one. Every single one. So you can do HRT, hormone replacement therapy, but without minerals, those aren't going to be utilized very well in your body. So some women go and they do HRT and they still are like, yeah, it's not really having the effect. So, but if you can get humic and fulvic into your body, so you have this foundational support, not only of getting things into the nutrients into your cells, but also that full system detoxification, continual gentle detoxification, you're going to up-level your entire ecosystem because you're going to be able to generate closer to that 1200 watts that your body needs. If your body is only generating maybe 600 or 700 of the 1200 watts you need, what is it going to do? It's going to say, well, I can't really take care of hair follicles and teeth, gums, or that inflammation that you have in your gut. And in fact, the cells are going to constantly be sending this message to your nervous system saying, I don't have what I need. I don't have what I need. Go looking. Things aren't really good here. No, I need something. And then what does that do? It keeps you up at night. It has you going, looking, and opening the fridge an hour after you ate dinner, going, yeah, just one more thing, looking for those salty or sweet,
Yep.
snacks. So this is, if we start thinking about the body as a cellular system, when those things show up, we go, oh, what's happening in my cellular system? My cells need fuel.
It's been interesting watching the rise of functional medicine for me as a doctor of Chinese medicine, because I think it's so brilliant in so many ways and there's so many interesting tests. I love lab work. I'm such a nerd like you are. Like it's always fun to explore these things. But what I find is that so many of my patients, so many of my friends end up spending thousands of dollars on tests and on supplements. And I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on stuff with Remy. And to me, it's like if you don't get the foundations right to start, then there's no point in moving forward, you know? So I feel like with the minerals, it really is one of those very, like, I can't think of any circumstance as to why I would not recommend these minerals to somebody. Are there any cautions with them that you know of? Because I think that that is a starting place for anybody who's navigating a chronic health disorder or just feeling less than as vibrant as they feel like they might be able to.
I really do believe that Humic and Fulvic are designed for all cellular systems on Earth, so by nature for that. So I don't think there's anybody who they wouldn't be helpful for. With the Humic, which is our product called MicroBoost, it's the one that makes the water dark. Still tastes like water, but it's a dark color. The thing about it is a powerful detoxification agent. So if you are toxified and you just start out one day and take a whole bunch of humic, you could have a detox response. So if you believe you're toxified or know you have toxic issues in your body, I always recommend a slow introduction method, and it's easily accessed. There's a QR code on the back of the bottle, you scan that, and there's an area that talks about if you're sensitive. And most people who are sensitive, maybe you've had mold exposure, or you've had autoimmune, or you've had long COVID. These things make people's systems more sensitized to detoxification. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And in my book, called The Mineral Reset, I have a whole section on detoxification and the difference between acute, like intensive detoxification, and continual detoxification that humic and fulvic provide, which is really for your ecosystem the best way to get detoxification happening in your body.
Yeah. Well, and it's considering that we're consistently exposed to these toxins, it sort of makes much more sense to me. So I know anybody listening might feel like I am just super hyping up these products. I am hyping up these products because I love them and I genuinely recommend them. We genuinely use them in my house. I have only had a couple of companies on the podcast, and they were literally the three companies that I use in my home and recommend for my patients all the times. And Beam is the only product that I recommend to every single person that
Mhm.
crosses my path. So that's why I find them to be so essential. And that's why I'm so excited about it. But I know your book is coming out. So tell us a little bit about anything about the book being released, where people can find it, anything that you'd love to share with everybody about this next adventure you're taking.
So, of course, I did start Beam Minerals. That's our company. And I started it because of my own experience with the humic and fulvic substances and wanting people to be able to have them. But truly, my main mission is to help people understand about minerals and how they are this foundational support for the body. So, I wrote this book called The Mineral Reset. And it's really an essential guide to replenishing your body and restoring your health. So, at the most foundational level. And what I did was I brought the information to people through story. So it's my story, but it's also what I call my aha moments, and help just kind of walking people through so you could easily understand this potentially very technical subject in ways that you can envision in your mind and you can really apply to your life. So there's kind of this informational part. There's a whole section about detoxification. There's a whole buying guide for if you want to see how to get minerals into your body, what would work best for you. There's a whole section with different chronic health issues. So you can go through and let's say you have autoimmune, or let's say you have issues with sleep, or let's say you have issues with, painful periods. There's different sections where you can look up a particular chronic health issue that you're dealing with and learn about how minerals might support you. There's also a mineral reset program at the end that you can go through yourself. I'm also going to be providing that in an online program that's going to happen in late May. When you purchase the book, if you fill out your information, you'll get the information on our website. You will get actually a free ticket to the Bookinar. We call it a Bookinar rather than webinar, but so if in case that's something that interests you. But if you want to get the book today, we would love it. You can get it. Go to mineralresetbook.com, and you will be able to choose whichever purchase method you'd like to use.
I love it.
Um, I think it's going to be a really, really useful book for people. What I say is if you want more energy in your life, who doesn't? The best energy on earth is from the earth. It's minerals.
I think that's so true. And I think that's a perfect place to end it. I could nerd out with you all day, every day. Again, I love your products, but I also just think that you're just such a genuine light in a world of sort of bullshit health influencers and crappy products. So it
Oh,
gives me a little hope in this industry.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That means the world to me because it's really important to me that I'm not really interested in being the smartest person in the room. I'm interested in making other people smart. So,
Well, that's what these products do. I mean, honestly, I can't even tell you. I stopped doing the podcast for quite a long time because I was like, I cannot have an hour-long conversation and even keep track of what's going on right now. Like this is my strongest strength. My greatest strength is my brain in many ways. And I was like, I can't even do this. So I took a pretty long hiatus while I was recovering, and Beam made a big difference in sort of helping me on that path, and I combined it with some other stuff. I still have my hyperbaric,
yeah.
so that's always helpful.
Yeah.
But
I'm so
really,
excited that you're feeling better.
yeah, poke,
Yeah.
poke.
And continue feeling better and better.
Well, nature helps. We're both spoiled to live in Colorado, so that certainly helps. Also, I'm hiking with the dogs every day.
Well, I'm glad you're back online too on the podcast. Congratulations.
All right.